ionizing radiation. This study was initiated by Vesna Baryanovich, who suggested let's take nanodiamond-polymer and put it under proton beam and see what happens. So it was done in collaboration of International Technology Center and Institute Rudgers Boskovic, Zagreb, Croatia. I would like also acknowledge other colleagues from Croatia who did proton irradiation studies, as well as Raman and FTIR spectroscopy analysis, as well as Igor Vlasov from General Physics Institute, who did photoluminescence studies of the irradiated composites. At the beginning of my talk, I will give a brief motivation of this study, then present result of vibrational spectroscopy of proton irradiated PDMS nanodiamond composites, different proton doses, and show results on photoluminescence and mechanical properties of the composites. So there is very high radiation environment around our Earth. There are two major sources of ionizing radiations. It is so-called galactic cosmic rays, which come out of the solar system, as well as solar energetic particles, which appear from time to time through coronal mass ejections events. These radiation sources mostly consist of polymer particles with hundreds MeV, proton particles with hundreds of MeV energy, as well as electrons, alpha particles, and more heavy ions. However, magnetic field of Earth protects us from these highly energetic particles, as well as atmosphere. However, when spacecraft operate at so-called low Earth orbit, which is at 201,000 kilometers above the Earth, there is very high density and dose of irradiation. Mostly those are protons of 2 and 7 higher MeV energy. So polymer nanocomposites are obviously very appealing structural elements for applications in spacecraft due to their lightweight and strength. However, they are susceptible to irradiation damage, and it is necessary to develop more radiation-resistant polymer composites. So in general, ionizing radiation includes energetic electrons, ions, gamma rays, and UV radiation. Energetic ions break chemical bonds and generate free radicals. Electrons and gamma rays, up to some extent, can contribute to cross-linking, which is a positive event. For all types of irradiation, overheating is a big problem, however, even for electrons and gamma rays in cross-linking mode of operation. And it's also necessary to remember that depth of damage is different for different types of ionizing radiation. For example, protons can penetrate to 100 microns at MeV energy range, while MeV electrons can penetrate to several millimeter depths in polymers. It was discovered within last decade that inorganic nanofillers can improve the radiation resistance of polymers. Thin-wall nanotubes were actively used in such studies, as well as wide-band gap particles such as zinc oxide, for example. Mechanisms which are discussed to contribute to these improvements of the radiation resistance are due to large specific surface area of nanoparticles which can gather free radicals formed by ionizing radiation. It is also a hypothesis that wide-band gap materials with high exciton binding energy can dissipate thermal carriers and help in thermal budget release of the irradiated polymers, and single-wall nanotube improve heat removal and dissipate electrostatic charge when they are in a percolation threshold mode. So in this study, the following irradiation conditions had been used. Two MeV proton beam with 5 mm diameter was used, and 4 major doses. So first it was clear that these doses, 10 in power 10 or 12 protons per cubic centimeter, no noticeable influence on material properties. However, at higher doses, 10 in power 13, 14, and 15, we observed quite significant structural changes. So I will operate during the talk with these doses, D1, D2, D3, and D4, corresponding to particular dose and beam current. So D1 and D2 provide the same dose, but D2 was performed at higher beam current. So we will look how beam current influences to the result. And I also would like to mention that this higher dose corresponds to several weeks of operating of a spacecraft at a low Earth orbit. So what might happen with polymer within weeks of operation. As a polymer matrix, we used polydimethylsiloxane PDMS matrix. Siloxane are used as paints in spacecraft, so it was a motivation to choose this type of polymer matrix. It consists of silicon oxygen backbone and CH3 side chains. As nanotellers, we used detonation nanodiamond with 150 nanometers and 40 nanometer agglomerate sizes with polyfunctional surface. Most results are shown for polyfunctional surface. That means that they contain different types of surface group. But we also did carboxylation and selenation of surface groups. I show at the end results for functionalized nanodiamond. And we used zinc oxide nanoparticles 40 nanometers in size, and we use single wall nanotubes 5 micron in length. So these Raman spectra show characteristic spectra of pure PDMS and PDMS with 1% of nanofilers. I would like to bring your attention to several specific peaks in Raman spectra, which is COC chain related peak at 492, it's rather weak, as well as the peak related to carbon-silicon bonds, as well as CH3 related peaks. We did not observe additional peaks which would appear during irradiation, so it was no additional peaks formed. So let's now look at irradiation results. This is again Raman spectra for 150 nanometer nanodiamond composites and for pure PDMS irradiated at those 4 doses that I provided before. So what you can see that this is spectra for pure PDMS. This is for D1 dose 1. You can see that some characteristic peaks intensity started to decrease. At dose 2, which is the same dose but higher current, you can see that peaks became even less pronounced. However, photoluminescence was too high for highest irradiation dose, so it was not possible to do structural analysis of Raman spectra. So also let us look to the PDMS for CH3 bond. its initial peak, and D1 and D2 irradiation dose, you can see decrease of the peak intensity. What happens if PDMS contains nanodiamond? In general, you can see that in this representation, picture is similarly see decrease of the characteristic peaks, and again to high PL prevent us from the further analysis at more interesting high doses. So what was used, it was FTIR spectra that provided us more detailed information for all irradiation doses ranges. So you can see that during increase of the proton irradiation doses at dose 3, D3, characteristic peaks practically disappear for pure DMS, the same of course for higher dose, and for CH3 group, you can see that hydrogen is stripped out, no CH3 groups exist at dose 2, 3, and 4. So it would happen so with pure PDMS, how it lost its structural integrity. And what happens in the presence of nanodiamond? And quite interesting things happen. So you can see that those D3 all characteristic peaks still present for both backbone chain and side chain, as well as CH3 group, and hydrogen is stripped out only at the highest dose, while features for CC and CO still present. So it concludes that presence of nanodiamond in PDMS matrix provide enhanced radiation resistance. So what happened if we use smaller size nanodiamond particles? So upper spectra show results, the same results that we've seen before at the previous slide, and lower pictures show us results for PDMS plus 40 nanometer nanodiamond particles. What you can see is that in this case, CH3 characteristic peak is also preserved. So we conclude that for smaller nanodiamond particles, radiation resistance is better than for larger aggregates of nanodiamond used in PDMS composites. So in general, 20 times improvement in radiation resistance, 20 times is difference between the doses when characteristic features disappear for pure PDMS as compared to when these features disappear for nanocomposite. Next slide shows us analysis for composites containing zinc oxide, 1% of 40 nanometer zinc oxide nanoparticles, as well as carbon nanotubes on the right. So you can see that zinc oxide has excellent resistance to radiation at highest dose even, right? There is well-pronounced peak. As well as you can see, even fine features are preserved for CC and CO type of vibrations. At the same time, you can see that carbon nanotubes are not as good as nanodiamond and zinc oxide. CH3 characteristic peak disappeared at D4 dose, highest dose, and features are not as well pronounced for CC and CO vibrations. So a group from Croatia did AB initial simulations on the vibrational spectra of PDMS, and this is a table with assignment of the different groups in Raman and IR spectroscopy. And what also the colleagues did, they took intensity of CH3, the most strong antisymmetric stretching peak, and calculated ratio of intensities of this peak and some other characteristic peaks which are attributed to CH3 vibrations, such as CH3 symmetric stretch. It also contains CH2 webbing mode, and silicon carbide stretching mode and silicon oxide, silicon oxygen stretching mode. So this table contains these ratios of integrated intensities of these characteristic peaks. Again, this table is too complicated, and next time I will adapt Nesterenko diagram for this type of analysis. It's extremely useful. But what I want to emphasize, at least for backbone intensities changes under irradiation of smallest dose. We used Raman spectra for this analysis, so only D1 and D2 doses are provided here. So with increase of the irradiation dose, COC bond become kind of destroyed, and increase of this ratio tells us about this fact. What we can see is that with 40 nanometer diamonds, this ratio is not as high, while for 150 nanometer nanodiamonds, it's similar to pure PDMS. And zinc oxide and single wall nanotube show more significant improvement in stability of the backbone bond as compared to pure PDMS. So in general, 150 nanometers nanodiamond is not as useful for these composites as small particles of nanodiamond and zinc oxide, as well as nanotube for low doses. We also did photoluminescence studies of these composites. It appears that when irradiated with protons, PDMS acquire bright photoluminescence. You can see under UV radiation there is bright blue photoluminescence for pure PDMS and green photoluminescence for PDMS containing nanodiamond. With filter you can clearly see these blue dots appeared in the places of irradiation, and here you can see profiles of photoluminescence corresponding to these four regions. This is a white light image of the irradiated composite, and Igor Vlasov took Raman took photoluminescence spectra along these lines, and they are shown on the next slide. So what you can see here is that intensity of the photoluminescence gradually decrease for small dose irradiation of pure PDMS and PDMS nanodiamond composites, and then sharply decrease where irradiation penetration of the proton stops. So in general, we were interested to see if there are any interesting events at the depths corresponding to the place where proton stops and where high vacancy formation is typically expected. However, we didn't see anything outstanding in this region. This tool tells us that source of photoluminescence is not damage event at this high vacancy production region. And finally, this slide shows us photoluminescent intensity for highest dose of irradiation, and it appears that presence of nanodiamond when composite is irradiated at 10 in power 15 proton per square centimeters is 50 times stronger than pure PDMS. So it's very interesting phenomenon that presence of nanodiamond greatly enhances photoluminescence of the PDMS composites. And the final slides on the mechanical properties. Nanodiamond significantly improved elastic properties of PDMS, especially carboxylated nanodiamond and seleniated nanodiamond. Data is not shown for seleniated. At the same time, zinc oxide nanocomposites prepared at the same condition showed elastic modulus lower than that for pure PDMS. So in our case, zinc oxide didn't provide enhancement of mechanical properties. So what I would like to conclude that addition of zinc oxide, nanodiamond, and single-wall nanotubes provide enhancement in radiation resistant up to 20x, and it can be higher since it did not reach the full structural degradation of the composites. Doses can be higher, and we still can see improvement. Smaller nanodiamonds are recommended for these applications. In terms of luminescence, PDMS nanodiamond composite can be a useful means to detect high energy particles in general, as well as possibly detect irradiation dose to provide calibration to photoluminescence corresponding to some specific doses. In terms of mechanical properties, nanodiamonds provide significant improvement of the mechanical properties of PDMS, while zinc oxide not. So you can think of the combination of improvement of radiation resistance and mechanical properties is in favor of using nanodiamond particles. Thank you for your attention.